Can I make the perfect fantasy tabletop role-playing game? Sure. It can't be that hard, right? Fantasy TTRPGs seem to be the standard in the hobby. There are a dime a dozen, so many in fact, it really feels like there should be one that is perfect for me and my tastes, but even with a bookshelf full of games, I haven't been able to find one that is just right for the type of game that I like to play. So I'm gonna make my own, and it's gonna be awesome. I've made a few games in the past, but never a straight up fantasy TTRPGs. I've written a lot of system neutral adventures that can be used with whatever fantasy game you want. I play games fairly regularly, not as much as I'd like, but a couple of times a month. And I have this YouTube channel where I talk about tabletop role-playing games every week. What I'm saying is I have a little bit of experience and I have a lot of opinions on what makes the perfect game. So where the heck do I even start with all of this? Well, I got this zine called Make Your Own One-Page Role-Playing Game by Skeleton Code Machine, and this seems like a great little guide to get me started. Now you might be asking, wait a second, a one-page game? How can the perfect fantasy game fit onto one page? Well, some of the rules for my favorite games fit onto one page, but then all of the extra thematic stuff and random tables, those take up more pages. So I think my approach to my perfect game is going to be to keep it rules light. Simple, and then expand on it with all the setting and theme stuff. Chapter 1 is an introduction. Just gonna skip past that. We know the deal. Chapter 2 talks about different kinds of fun. That's interesting. They reference a paper called A Formal Approach to Game Design and Game Research, which says there's 8 types of fun. I think my fantasy game is probably most concerned with fantasy and fellowship. Fantasy is obvious. I play role-playing games to play make-believe with my friends and go on adventures in an imaginative world. And reflecting on these 8 types of fun, I also think that fellowship is important. At my table, I usually put a lot of emphasis on how the players' characters know each other and their motivations for going on this adventure as a group. I want the players to feel like they're really in it together. You know, there's nothing better than when one player does something heroic, makes some big sacrifice to save the day for the other players. I just love that stuff. So I'll probably have that be a part of character creation somehow, and maybe there'll be some sort of help mechanic too. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself, but the great thing about this zine is that each chapter has these little exercises, these practical things you can do to figure out exactly what you want for your own game. I went through the exercise, decided on the type of fun I'm trying to have with my game. Fantasy and fellowship, that sounds like the perfect North Star for my game. Chapter 3 is all about one-page role-playing games, simple core mechanics, reusable components, narrative prompts, and random tables, one-shot friendly. This is all the stuff that I love at my table. Now, one thing I remembered while reading through this chapter is I like to spend my time drawing and making up imaginary adventures. I don't have a lot of patience for complex mechanics and game systems. I'm sure this isn't going to come up later in the video at all. The rest of this chapter talks about types of RPGs, and I think it's been pretty clear from the outset that what I want to make my perfect RPG is the version of a standard fantasy RPG. There's a game master, players in a shared world, rolling dice. And at this point, I should say that I'm focused on making my ideal game. Obviously, it's not the game for everyone, but I hope that as we go through this video, you can see how fun it is to make your own game and give it a shot yourself. Or, I don't know, maybe you have perfectly compatible tastes with me and I'm making your new favorite game right now. Either way, I'll have a link to the Make Your Own One-Page RPG zine down in the description. Definitely check it out. Give it a shot. On to chapter 4, choosing a theme. This chapter has some great advice if you are starting from square one, but I have a pretty specific theme in mind. I'm in the middle of fulfilling Kickstarter rewards for my first big hardcover fantasy adventure, Dragontown and the Darkness Below. And part of the reason I want to make my perfect TTRPG is so people can play this adventure and all the other adventures I make each month on Patreon in a system that really works for this setting and theme. So at the end of chapter 4, the guide has you creating a one-sentence pitch. For my game, it'll probably be something like, you play as an adventurer in a whimsical fantasy world, saving the day from unseen evils. Moving on to chapter 5, selecting mechanisms. This is where we get into making the actual game mechanics. Now, the zine suggests using existing mechanisms, which I love. Like I said earlier, it feels like there should already be the perfect game out there, so I should probably just take some existing mechanics that I like and adapt them to suit my preferences. Now, Tunnel Goons by Nate Tremay is listed as one of the examples in the zine, and that's awesome because it's one of my favorite games. I love it so much, I've already made a couple games based on it, and the cool thing about Tunnel Goons is when you make a character, you roll on these childhood, profession, and during the war random tables. The results are really simple, like I was a book fetch, then a caravan drifter that joined the rebels during the war. So super simple, right? But I find that even from these little tables, these like not even sentences, you can create a really compelling character. And what's super awesome is during the game, we're talking game mechanics here, if you can justify in the narrative how your time as a book fetch helps you for rolling a save, you get to add a bonus to your roll. So even if you don't have a fully fleshed out idea of who your character is, just by playing, just by engaging with the very simple mechanics of the game, you end up creating one just by using your imagination during playing the game. The other thing I love, these skills, if you want to even call them that are on your character sheet, they're not some bespoke skill or ability that's written out. They're just a part of your character that you can reference, and it gets you thinking about your character and how they would react and adapt in the different situations that come up as you're playing. I think it's a beautiful, simple way of encouraging role-playing within a core mechanic, and it's just my absolute favorite, so I'm definitely stealing that. I think in my game, having some unique and evocative classes and talents that aren't like fully blown out things, just some simple words will be awesome. Maybe you can be like a storm caller or a tree whisperer. You know, that'll evoke what your character is all about, but it's up to you, the player, to get creative with it instead of just picking from a list of skills that you read off of your character sheet. You got to use your imagination and think of what your character's doing based on who they are as a person, as an adventurer. Now, what I don't love about Tunnel Goons is the addition and subtraction. This might sound crazy, but even doing a little bit of math at the table really takes me out of the game. I love the feeling of rolling dice and seeing what happens, but I don't want to do math. I want to stay in the fiction as much as possible. And that makes me think of Tiny Dungeon by Alan Barr. In this game, you're just rolling a few d6s, the same as Tunnel Goons actually, but instead of adding and subtracting and stuff, you're just trying to roll a 5 or a 6 on your d6. That equals a success. That's all there is to it, just looking for 5 and 6, and that sounds awesome. So in my game, you're always rolling a d6 for a test, adding additional d6s for a relevant stat, and then on top of that, the Tunnel Goons part, if your class or talents or items are relevant to the situation, then you can add even more d6s, building a dice pool. You roll them all, any 5 or 6s will do as a success. Super simple, Tunnel Goons, Tiny Dungeon, core mechanic, done. My games, they usually don't have a ton of combat in them. You know, combat is the fail state kind of thing, right? But this game is about adventuring, so that means there's gonna be danger. So that means I gotta figure out how to handle monster combat. Like I said, I really want to make this system work for the Dragontown adventure. Actually, let me show you. I'm actually I'm actually really proud of this. So in Dragontown, I wanted to have a way that you could adapt the monsters to whatever fantasy game you're playing really intuitively. So each monster has health, armor, speed, and damage on a 1 to 4 scale. And hopefully it's just intuitive from looking at it. But like a 1 is underwhelming, a 2 is average, a 3 is like big time, and a 4 is like, holy crap, amazing, right? The idea is that you can adapt these scores to whatever game you're playing, but I'd love to incorporate this 1 to 4 scale to make combat really simple and straightforward in my game. Now I'm actually going to fast forward because when I got to this challenge, it sent me down a rabbit hole. I spent 3 days trying to figure out how to make it all work, keeping the no math core mechanic intact, keeping it simple and narrative facing. Like the zine suggests, I looked at every RPG on my shelf trying to figure this out. This is like just as much as I can hold up right now. This isn't every RPG, but I looked through all of them. I'm looking at Shadow Dark, at Into the Odd, Perils and Princesses, Heroes of Cerulean, Nimble, Cairn, Mouse Ritter, Troika, Mazes, Trophy Gold, Wander Home, Dragonbane, all kind. I'm just reading mechanics. I don't enjoy it, but I did it. I spent hours play testing and running fake combats, rolling dice, taking notes. Just when I had one part figured out, another part wouldn't feel right. It started getting really complicated, and then I asked my pal Scott for advice, and he reminded me to stick with the core mechanic of rolling 5s and 6s. Just keep it simple, dude. I even spent a ton of time just laying on the floor, brainstorming, and that's when it hit me. What kind of idea? If a 5 or a 6 on a roll equals a hit and a wound, then speed equals how many times the monster attacks each round, damage equals how many d6s are in the monster's dice pool. I was going to be all player-facing rolls, but I decided that as a GM, I actually like rolling dice too, so the monsters get to roll their own d6s in front of the players. Super, super fun. I got kind of hung up on health and armor. I think armor negating attacks isn't very fun, so I didn't want to use that. Instead, when the players roll their attacks, again, they're trying to get a 5 or a 6 on their d6 roll. Well, if a monster has armor, you have to roll a 6. 5s don't count until you break through that armor. That seems like a good kind of like upping the stakes solution for monsters that have high armor. Here's the bummer. There does need to be some math. I tried to avoid it, but with a 1 to 4 health stat, there just isn't enough for a meaningful fight. So to find the HP of a monster, the GM will need to multiply the health stat by the number of players at the table. It's just a little bit of math, right? It's okay. And in the end, it is going to make the encounters more fun. No matter how many players there are, it works. So I think it's worth it. And sometimes it takes 3 days to figure out something really, really simple, but in the end, it's awesome because it's super simple and it super works. Why did my foot squeak? Now, the other thing I'm really proud of about the monsters in Dragontown and any other monsters that I'll make for this game coming up is that they have these narrative-focused abilities listed. So it's really easy for a GM to roll the monster dice pool and narrate exactly what the monster is doing when they roll a hit. It makes it really easy for the GM to stay super story-focused. And with these super simple mechanics, it keeps the game moving quickly too. Oh yeah, did I mention that I ditched ability scores? Originally, I had strength, dex, and wits or wisdom, but those are totally gone now. In my mind, it's just another abstraction that doesn't really do enough heavy lifting for the narrative, so I just cut them out, and it actually feels pretty good, honestly. Okay, so chapter 6 of the Make Your Own One-Page RPG is all about writing and layout and publishing, and that's the fun part. That's where I'm at right now. I'm at the stage where I get to write up all the narrative-focused stuff like the classes and the talents and make up a bunch of items. No more mechanics, just the fun stuff. Oh, I also have to think of a name for this game. Actually, by the time this video comes out, I should have hopefully announced the game on my Patreon. So if you want to know what this perfect game is called, it's not actually perfect, but it's like, you know, my first shot. It's something fun. Go check out the Patreon, link in the description. I'll be releasing this game at the end of the month. So if you sign up in September, you can get the digital version, and I'll mail you the finished zine if you join at the legend level. Honestly, I'm having so much fun working on this game, and I hope you think it sounds awesome and want to check it out. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!